Hello, my friends, and welcome to the CineFix Top 100, the Christmas party we got invited to by mistake, where we have to watch 100 of the greatest movies of all time until we thwart a heist. We're going to be stuck here for a while, but I'm Clint Gage, and joining me, as always, with zero interest in the debate about what is and isn't a Christmas movie, it's Alex Stedman. Alex, how we doing?
I'm doing great, and I'm really glad you got that out of the way right away, because it's the worst debate ever. Stop having it. It's not interesting. It's not good.
Yeah, I'm going to make one joke about it in your lower third, and we're done. And of course, also right there next to you, he puts the m***er in yippee-ki-yay motherfucker. It's Michael Calabro. Cal, what's happening, man?
Damn, Clint, starting with the bleeps already. Fan, I might add.
Yeah.
Coming in hot. God damn.
Listen, I'm a fan of as much as we talk about like the very first bits of movies that teach you how to watch the rest of the movie. Like we can do that too. Like we're talking about Die Hard today, so let's get right into saying yippee-ki-yay motherfucker.
Whoa. This is on YouTube. Yippee-ki-yay melon farmer.
Melon, that's
farmer.
your replacement. Okay.
That's the replacement.
Is it? I've never heard that in my life.
It's like the joke of like cable TV R movies.
Wow. Okay.
Melon farmer. You know what? One of the funniest ones you remember The Hard Way with James Woods and Michael J. Fox?
What's the one?
I'll never forget the TV version of The Hard Way where he yells, "You slug in a ditch." For some reason, slug in a ditch is the one, like James Woods screaming that is worth it.
Oh,
just
that's excellent.
To track down an old airplane edit of The Hard Way.
Don't forget, this is what happens. This is what happens when you see a stranger in the Alps. That's from The Big Lebowski. This is what happens when you f*** a stranger in the ass instead of that, and he's just like smashing the car, the Corvette, where he's like, "This is what happens when you see a stranger in the Alps."
That kind of works a little bit.
So what I'm trying to say, Clint, is do we have to dub these now? Should we
That would have been better. We should have been dubbing them this whole time.
Oh man, if we have been dubbing this episode the whole time and we're just now hearing about it, like that's strange. But maybe from now on, we'll do that. I'll make sure to get some wild lines from you guys for Melon Farmer, and we'll just use that instead of the bleeps. Yeah. That'll be great. I already blew it with what episode we're dealing with today. We're talking about Die Hard.
Come out to the coast. We'll get together. Have a few laughs.
I, for one, am very excited to talk about this. Before we get into this, is a tiny little bit of business. This is the last episode of Alone Against the World. This is the last episode of season 3. I think we're ending with a very fitting film for that theme, for Dan's algorithm to throw at us. But how's the season gone, guys? Season recap, not recap, retrospective. How do you feel about Alone Against the World movies?
Some of my favorite ones.
It's been such a crapshoot, I feel. Like, it had such good ones. Akira, Kill Bill, I don't care what anyone says, and then just some random ones. And
yeah, I don't care what anybody says about Kill Bill either, as it turns out.
I also just, like, when I heard the theme, it sounded way too specific, but a lot of movies fit that theme.
Yeah, and we've been able to sneak around and find sort of a back door into the theme occasionally with some of them, like Anchorman and things like that.
I still don't get Toy Story, but
Yeah. I think that's just Dan.
Toy Story proves that AI is not coming for our jobs just yet. It's got a little more work to do.
Yeah, I thought I was going to miss the Community season more, but this one has been such a ride that I've enjoyed it.
But the other thing that the end of season 3 means is that our Ikiru and Uncut Gems mashup, This Is How I Win t-shirt, will no longer be available at the end of this season. So, to be honest, I'm not entirely sure how long it's going to take for it to disappear from the store. So act fast if you haven't gotten it yet and you want to. It will be available this week, and then it won't be. So get your top 100 Ikiru Uncut Gems mashup t-shirt. Do your moms have yours yet, guys?
Absolutely.
My mom still doesn't know I have a podcast.
This is a great way to tell her. Actually, just give her the shirt.
Yeah, exactly. Mom, listen, we need to talk. I've got a podcast, and here's a t-shirt.
I don't know if my parents have ever. I bet they've seen Uncut Gems. I don't think they've ever heard of Akira. Well, we're gonna fix that. Damn it.
Oh, I guarantee you, my mom's not heard of either. She's heard of Adam Sandler. I bet that's the case. A movie that she for sure does know, and this is why I know she's going to listen to this episode, is Die Hard is a legitimately important film for my family. I remember going to see Die Hard 2 in the theaters with my mom and like having a conversation on the way in. It's like, no, they're going to say some bad words and you're not supposed to say them like in front of people. I'm like, yeah, I know. So like going to see Die Hard 2.
Yeah, how old were you?
When was Die Hard 2? 90?
90? Was it 90? It might have been.
It was pretty quickly after it, but I was 8 or 9 tops. But directed by John McTiernan in 1988, starring Bruce Willis and Alan Rickman, among a lot of other really great bit parts and role players that we'll talk about later. But it's a story of if you're not aware, it's a story of a New York detective arriving in LA on Christmas Eve, hoping to patch things up with his estranged wife, but instead he foils a terrorist plot, which is what you do on Christmas when you're traveling, and unintentionally sets off decades worth of useless and stupid arguments about what Christmas movies are. Which is the last time we'll talk about.
Thank you.
But so that, I mean, listen, this is another one of those movies that I don't remember the first time I saw this movie. It's impossible. This movie has always been around and it's always been in my head and it's always been a fun thing to go back to. But do you remember? Did Die Hard leave an impression on you right out of the gate, guys?
Now I get to do my spiel about how I've long been a brat about Die Hard. So I purposely went most of my life without watching Die Hard because every dude bro I've ever known has wanted to tell me how good Die Hard is. So I out of protest, I purposely didn't watch it because I am a brat in that way. And I acknowledge that. But a few years ago, my brother-in-law, shout out to you, Tyler, was like, Alex, please, Die Hard's my favorite movie. Please, for the love of God, just watch it. Tyler got me to watch it. And I can't be that much of a brat about it. It's a really good movie. Like, I wish I could sit here and nitpick it as I went my entire life being a jerk about it, but it's great. And I liked it so much that I proceeded to watch all the Die Hards in that same weekend with my brother-in-law. Really up and down that series. But Die Hard with a Vengeance, that's a good one. That's a banger. But yeah, I still kind of want to, there's like some weird little grudge I have against this movie culturally, but like even rewatching it for this episode, I was like, I can't not like have a little fun with it. It's a good movie. Like I want to sit here and be a jerk about it. Like you guys were about The Dark Knight.
You can if you want.
That's
the whole point of having a podcast is being a jerk about things.
I think, I think there are better movies that exist, but you could say that about any movie.
Sure.
I think eventually it just came to represent something for me, but it's genuinely good. It sucks when you're like adamant about something your entire life and then you like give in and you're like, oh, I might have been incorrect.
It is hard to be wrong about Die Hard, I can imagine.
I will say we're going to talk about this. This movie would be, and I've learned this is not a hot take, this movie would be 15% of the movie it is without Alan Rickman. I think Hans Gruber elevates it to, from a very generic standard action movie to actually iconic.
The entire Gruber family of villainy has actually done a lot to this franchise. There's Die Hard movies and then there's Die Hard movies with a Gruber in it. Yeah.
Die Hard 2 is fun because it was supposed to be a sequel to Commando, which is why it's like a little extra, like he's beating up a bunch of Green Berets and stuff like that instead of, more regular terrorists.
Also written by Steven D'Souza.
Yeah. Well, he co-wrote this one too.
Yeah. He wrote Commando. He wrote this. He wrote The Running Man. Like, this dude has a pretty good, I'm a big part of the 80s action vibe.
Well, we want to talk about the pedigree of this movie and real quick. I just blasting through some of the nuts and bolts of it, but it made like 140 million worldwide, which was puts it in 10th place in 1988. But check out 1988. This is in no particular order. Rain Man, Roger Rabbit, Coming to America, Twins, Fish Called Wanda, Cocktail, Big, Beetlejuice, Dead Ringers for your...
Dead Ringers made a top 10?
No, this isn't the top 10. This is just 1988
okay.
in general. I started to just list the top 10, but then I kept scrolling down and I was like, the whole year is full of bangers. But then there's Child's Play, Scrooged, The Naked Gun, our favorite.
I feel like we've talked about a lot of these movies.
Willow, Bull Durham, Moonstruck, Bambi, Midnight Run, Fatal Attraction, Wall Street, Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, They Live, another on the top 100, Dirty Dancing, Last Temptation of Christ, your boy, the Running Man, also our boy D'Souza here. 3 Men and a Baby. There's also Crocodile Dundee 2, which is better than the first, and Rambo 3, which was worse than the first two. But they bangers, all of them. 1988 was a hell of a year.
That's actually
and
crazy.
Die Hard was right there near the top.
Dude, we forgot. Did he get Heathers in there?
That was 88?
Yeah.
Oh my God, Heathers.
I didn't rattle off Heathers, but Heathers isn't. There's a little something for everybody. Like you can, there's nobody that will not find a movie they love in 1988.
Wow.
It's Bloodsport.
What was the last year we talked about like this? Was it the Dark Knight episode or?
Yeah, 2008
No.
was
Yeah.
was a monster year too.
we need to start doing like, is this the best year of all time? Where we just kind of figure out a video essay about individual years.
Yeah.
That could be a whole podcast. I'm just saying. Actually, not to jump ahead
Sure.
too far, but do we have like a best movie years Cinefix list? I feel like that'd be a great one.
Nope.
Jesus Christ, even the Thin Blue Line came out in 88?
My God, 88's stupid.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, you want documentaries? Here you go. So anyway, point is, Die Hard did great. It was a top 10 movie in a year with all of those bangers. So like it was a, and they did it on a,
It's 28. It's 28 mil. 28 million. I mean, they basically shot it all in Fox. They didn't have to go anywhere.
they shot it all. Yeah, they shot it all in the Fox lot.
Yeah.
They, which by the way, personal aside, right here, you can see behind me, it's Nakatomi Plaza. The first proper job I had when I moved to LA was in Fox Plaza. Like I got the job. And it was one of those moments where I called my mom almost in tears, being like, I'm going to work in Nakatomi Plaza. Like it was such a fun thing. It was in feature post-production accounting for Fox. And I worked in Nakatomi Plaza, and those elevators still there.
Huh?
It was so much fun.
Welcome to the party, pal.
I do think this is a great LA movie, even though it's all in a building. I for some reason I just love when anyone brings up Century City in an LA movie. Like when they did it in Barbie, I was like, hey, yeah, I'd go to work there some Century City. That's a thing.
And just like, Al Powell driving along Olympic. I'm like, yeah, I've been there.
Yeah.
I used to. That was how I drove to work. That was great. And the sunsets are ridiculous outside of Holly's window.
Yeah. And this is like peak the 80s too, where they're just like throwing on those like warming filters, like the great what are they, gradient filters?
yeah.
Like the Tony Scott loved those.
There's a lot very 80s about this movie. It's like they wanted to send off the 80s in the most 80s way.
Yeah. But and Jan de Bont was the DP of it, and he went on to do Speed and Twister, which two of the best early to mid 90s action movies that we had, I think. And we haven't talked about John McTiernan yet. John McTiernan, the director, listen to the run that he was on at this point. He did Predator in 87, he did Die Hard in 88, and he did Hunt for Red October in 90. Which is like, just those three movies are incredible. And then later he did Last Action Hero, Die Hard with a Vengeance, also great, which we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
And then the Thomas Crown Affair remake with Pierce Brosnan and Rene Russo. That was him too. Like, so he did some incredible movies. But also he did Time for like it's the funniest thing, and we don't need to get into his legal troubles, but he like wiretapped the producer of Rollerball because they were having creative differences, and then lied about it to investigators, and then he ended up in jail for a
Is
little
that
while,
why he
which
didn't do
was-
Die Hard 2?
Wait,
know.
he went to jail for wiretapping the producer of Rollerball?
That's the thing. I want to get into this.
Like he couldn't just like take
Yeah,
in that
yeah.
career
Well-
he couldn't just take the L. Like
No.
like his like first real L of his career.
He flew too close to the sun, I think.
Because Medicine Man was in the middle there. That's the only one I didn't mention, which was fine, I guess, but it was weird Sean Connery stuff. But Rollerball, yeah, he apparently wiretapped the producer, and like in investigating this, from what I understand, they also kind of uncovered that he'd kind of made a habit out of it. Like he apparently wiretapped a lot of people, including his ex-wife in their divorce proceedings and stuff like that, which is
That's
I
a
don't know.
weird
Anyway.
habit to get into.
There was also a
John.
funny thing where there was also, I know, right? And there was also a thing that he like appealed the original sentence to the point where they like reopened the case and charged him with more stuff. and found him guilty of more of it. And so he wound up like doing more jail time and paying more in fines than he would have if he'd have just been like, all right, whatever, I'll take the first ruling. But anyway, all that to say, John McTiernan has I don't know that he's the greatest guy, but that's not for us to decide. Point is, he made some incredible action movies. If Die Hard and Die Hard with a Vengeance alone, but then you throw Predator in there, and Hunt for Red October is great. So he's just a rock solid action director. We were talking before we started rolling, but have we mentioned Alan Rickman yet?
No.
Bruce Willis or Alan Rickman?
I mean, wasn't this Alan Rickman's first movie role?
His first official movie, yeah.
That's crazy. Like, and I know he was on Broadway before, and you can really tell like the Shakespearean-ness that comes out with Hans Gruber.
I mean, listen, you could tell that this was a $28 million movie because these guys were nobody at the time of Die Hard. Just like
Bruce Willis, not so much. Moonlighting was a legit hit for Bruce Willis.
Yeah, it was a big TV show, right?
And it was in those years where like, Bill Cosby couldn't make a movie in those days because it was. And he was the biggest star going, and so like TV stars to movie stars wasn't like necessarily a thing, but like he did, and apparently he got paid pretty well for this.
Like
so
$5 million,
he didn't take a big pay cut.
No, but it was still his first big movie, and this was also like give or take at the time that like
very much
Tom Hanks was also transitioning from like the TV star to what Big would Big have been 87? 88? Like when was Big?
Big was 88. I rattled that off in my big list.
So they're both doing their quote unquote big movies in the same year. But like, dude, listen to all of the number ones that they burned through before they landed on Bruce Willis. Richard Gere, Sylvester Stallone, Harrison Ford, Mel Gibson, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Clint Eastwood, De Niro, Charles Bronson, Don Johnson, also a TV star that could have made the leap but didn't.
Yeah.
Also, preeminent racist at the moment. Like if you need a racist Southerner right now in a movie, Don Johnson is really doing a good job of filling the bill.
You're talking about
typecasting, not him.
Yeah, no, yeah, casting.
I was like, wait a minute, did I miss a Don Johnson story?
No, he himself is not a racist, but
he's great in Rebel Ridge.
He's great in Rebel Ridge. He's great in Django. Like
it always reminds me of that great Onion headline, which is like white actor plays white nationalist a little too
the Adam Driver Black Klansman syndrome.
Yeah.
Richard Dean Anderson passed on that. That's MacGyver, right? Richard Dean Anderson?
MacGyver,
yeah, right. Burt Reynolds and Michael Madsen were all considered but declined the role.
I would have liked to see Harrison Ford. There are so many different timelines you could go with that. I think Bruce Willis does great.
I think Richard Gere would have been great.
Yeah, I don't disagree.
Having just recently watched American Gigolo, like he would have done a really good job with that. I think Mel Gibson is too close. Like Die Hard and Lethal Weapon are not far enough apart to like.
Yeah.
Lethal Weapon was literally the year before. That came out in 87.
Schwarzenegger could not have done this. He can't be the everyman.
No, I think he couldn't do it opposite Alan Rickman.
I don't think
it would have been too much. It would have been too much like chewing on scenery.
I don't think he's that kind of guy because he's just not an American. Like he can't lose
it's
the
a very
accent,
American movie,
right? Like part of John McClane's charm is that he's just like
he's a cowboy.
He's just like fine. I guess I'll be the hero.
And even like he's a New York guy, and like even him getting off the plane and being like, ugh, in California, like that sort of stuff is so good coming from Bruce Willis. We'll talk more about this as we go, but like John McClane's an asshole.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
This is another
my God.
This is another one of those protagonists where it's like, you are not a good guy, but that reluctance, like, I don't want to do this, but I have to, and then I'm going to be mad about it the whole time, and I also don't mind killing people. Like, that's where Richard Gere wouldn't have worked with this, I think. Like Richard, he would have been too.
I mean, he's a Buddhist. I don't know
soft,
how much.
I guess is the
that's
the
also
word
why
I'm
I think
looking for.
Harrison Ford would be really good.
Oh, Harrison Ford could have done this because
in
Indy's like this, right?
Yeah. Han Solo's like this sometimes.
This whole role is basically Indy just being like the sword guy comes down. And he's just like.
Yeah, it's Indy with the sword in a building.
But Bruce Willis, I think, I mean, it made him a star. It's one of these movies that it's hard to think about in terms of like there was a before time for Bruce Willis that happened before Die Hard. which is it really. I mean, there's a bunch of little stuff, and then moonlighting and made him kind of a name.
But then he went like the Shyamalan route, which I found like
There's like a decade in between there.
yeah. Oh yeah, but still like he made a pivot.
No, I mean Bruce Willis all of a sudden being a proper action star. In the days of Schwarzenegger and Stallone and Van Damme and like oily muscle bound dudes, and here comes this flatfoot from New York that is every bit as effective an action star as those other guys. Like it's cool. He walked and he did it all with nobody smokes a cigarette cooler or fires a gun cooler than Bruce Willis.
You know, it's
He made an action hero career off of looking cool, smoking cigarettes, and firing guns.
And that white tank top is doing a lot, you know? It's just a cool guy in a white tank top with a gun.
Let's also talk about Alan Rickman here, because this is his first film. He'd done some BBC TV, stuff prior to this, but it was a production of Dangerous Liaisons, apparently, on Broadway that got him this role. First proper film role, and he carries the hell out of this movie. But it's also the three movies that forever live together in my brain are Die Hard, Quigley Down Under, and Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, which were 88, 90, 91, this like coming out party of Alan Rickman is now our favorite villain.
He just knows how to elevate a villain. Like I admit that I'm a millennial. I grew up on the Harry Potter movies. I was obsessed with Snape. Like it's just, he always brings a little something. But I also think Hans Gruber, even without Alan Rickman, although you need Alan Rickman, but even without him, is a really fascinating villain. Like I think there's an argument to be made that while John McClane is the hero, I think Hans Gruber is the protagonist and McClane is the antagonist, trying to be a thorn in his side. It's actually a really interesting way to watch that movie. But like to have him be a political radical,
He's not a political radical.
I
That's
know,
all
but-
a front.
Yeah, I know.
like-
but you think he is until the very end.
Asian Dawn?
But that was one of my favorite parts.
That's what actually makes him like such a good villain.
Yeah.
Is that like he's like the quintessential 80s villain insofar as like he is a yuppie with a gun, and like they touch on it just so well, where he's like, he sees like the CEO guy's suit and he's like, that's a nice suit, I have two of those, and he's just like, casually dropping.
Rumor has it Arafat buys his there.
Yeah. By the way, I read this in Forbes. I don't know. I read about them in Time magazine, and then it's just like, no. This is all just a ruse to steal $600 million. They have no political affiliations, nothing like that. They just want money. Mm-hmm. Easy.
It's very 80s.
Yeah.
And the fact that he's so slick and so well put together, and like that makes him, and I don't know that it necessarily makes him scary, but like it makes McClane's battle more uphill, right? Seeing how well maintained, how well put together he is, and how seamless this plan seems to be. Alex, you mentioned something about like, number one, Steven D'Souza apparently, when he did his draft of the script, wrote it as though Hans were the hero.
Oh, I see. I didn't even know that.
He wrote it from Hans's perspective, yeah, which is an interesting bit about his rewrite, because the original script, needed some more of that stuff. It also, the book that it's based on is shockingly, like most of the stuff comes from the book. Everything from like, the fist with your toes stuff is in the book. The now I have a machine gun thing is from the book.
Oh, that's funny.
Even the C4 down tied to a chair and throwing down the elevator shaft. Carl showing up at the end still alive. Like the watch, Holly's watch plays a role.
Oh, wow.
In the book, except in the book, it's an older cop that's going to visit his daughter for Christmas, and his daughter's like super weird and shady, and she ends up dying at the end. So there's little differences in there, but like,
So you don't get like the divorce subplot? Because I also think that's very interesting.
Oh
And
no, the divorce subplot
he's
is great.
going.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But it's not in the book then.
The book is he's going to visit his daughter. Yeah.
Okay.
Because the book is a sequel to an older book that was actually a movie starring Frank Sinatra. Point is, we've done a Things You Didn't Know About Die Hard years ago. Anna, what's the difference? So that's where this is coming from. The book was all written from the protagonist's perspective. So like it just follows him around. So you don't get those cutaways to see Gruber's plan or to see Dwayne T. Johnson down there, the cops coming together. Like all of that stuff came together in the movie. Which the other thing, so we talked about Alan Rickman and Bruce Willis. Bonnie Bedelia is also great, by the way, because Holly is not messing around. Like The way that she stands up to John and Hans the same way, I think is great.
Well, actually, that's what won me over when I was being staunch about this being a dude bro movie. When I was like a few years ago, I was like, oh, but it's got Holly in it.
Yeah.
I like her.
Holly's a badass.
She's a badass.
The other thing I love about the cast of this movie is how great all the bit players are. Like
Oh, yeah.
all the little supporting roles. Aside from Rickman and Willis, like this was a movie that is full of bit players that are kind of at their peak. Like you got William Atherton coming off of Ghostbusters and Real Genius. Paul Gleason from Breakfast Club. Those are two great 80s villains in their own right, just that are just kind of off to the side. And then you got Alexander Goodenough, who was a ballet dancer, but between this and the Money Pit and Witness in the mid 80s, like he was having a real moment. Even Al Leong, the Asian guy, in Big Trouble in Little China, he was Genghis Khan in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. He was in Lethal Weapon.
That man knows how to eat a candy bar before a shootout.
Oh, hell yeah, he does. That's so funny. Robert Davi shows up at the end. He's a Bond villain a year after this. Like every supporting role in this movie, even the guy who's the lose the grid or lose your job guy, that's Rick Ducommun. He was our buddy from the Burbs. And Reginald Vell Johnson.
I was going to say
Family Matters
Powell.
the next year.
I love Powell.
Don't forget about Argyle.
Argyle's great.
Oh my God, yeah, Argyle's great.
But listen, he does such a good job of getting so much exposition out of the way in the beginning of the
He
movie,
does.
and not making it sound
Dude.
like exasperated. It's just like, yeah, I'm a cabbie. I used to drive a cab. People expect a little conversation. She's like, so you get divorced? No, yeah. You thought she'd
Come on, man, talk. Yeah,
It's
exactly.
like the simplest like screenwriting thing, but it does work.
That's like one of the things we also need to spend some time on before we get to anything in particular is just how tight the Sousa script is. Because so much of this stuff that like you notice in the subsequent viewings is screenplay stuff, not performance stuff. Like this is like one of those movies where like the performances are the thing that really grab you in, but then on like second and third viewing you notice like all these like small little plot points that like really draw you in, because like a big part of this movie, like a big awesome part of this movie is the subtext of like the yuppification of Holly. Right? It's just like their marriage is on the outs. She's like, it's the subtle things like using her maiden name. When she's on the phone with her housekeeper, she puts down the picture, and it's just like, then there's the watch that the company gives her and is ultimately the thing that Hans Gruber clings on to when he's hanging off the building.
There's a lot of LA versus New York to it.
Making the company from Japan.
Yeah.
That was a good note. Like, because it's an oil company in the book, some kind. But making it a Japanese company, it also gives something, because again, like McClane is such a pig-headed jerk in this movie. It gives his sort of like rough around the edges everyman something to rebel against, right? Like he gets off the plane, he's like, oh, California. And then he goes to the Christmas party. He's like, oh, I didn't know they celebrated Christmas in Japan. Like he's such a jerk about everything, and the movie goes out of its way to give him those things to be a jerk about.
By the way, Christmas is great in Japan from what I hear. They go hard for Christmas. I don't know why he would think that.
I've never been.
I haven't either, but I've just like seen it.
Because he doesn't know.
But
He doesn't know.
But that's kind of also what I was saying about Hans Gruber. Like, yes, Alan Rickman is a genius, but I like how they kind of do this contrast between McClane and Gruber, where it's like it tells you exactly who McClane is immediately. Like he's a grouch. He's a bit of a snob about LA. He's still a family man. But like you have to like wait to peel back those layers with Gruber. Like first you think he's a terrorist, then you think he's a political radical, then he's just a thief. And I think it's really interesting how they're foils for each other in that way, where I feel like usually the opposite.
I don't know that anybody in this movie is a good guy or a bad guy. Like it's a really fascinating thing, because like everybody has their motives and everybody has their stuff going on, from Hans and John all the way to Big Johnson and Little Johnson. Everybody has their schemes going, and everybody's like kind of half aware that everybody else has their schemes going. And like, there's not a lot of mystery to this movie. Like everybody's decently transparent about what's going on, but everybody so stubbornly thinks that they're the one that is holding all the cards, right? Like everybody and Dwayne T. Robinson, like honestly, Al Powell is the only guy in the movie.
That's what I was
that's
just
got
about to
his head
say.
completely screwed on straight.
I think Al
Yeah.
Powell is the I think he's the hero. I think he is the hero of this movie.
Yeah.
He's great.
He is like, but yeah,
Right.
you're
I mean, if there's an everyman in the movie, it's Al Powell, because he's just like, listen, like, this is a terrible situation and you just have to do something. Like, be helpful, please. Like, it's kind of his approach.
To your point, I'll probably be buying a shitload of Twinkies when like life comes
oh my
to test
god.
me.
When I tried to like memorize the ingredients like he did, but I failed.
Yellow dye number 5 is the only one that
But
I
he also
remember.
gets like the big final hero moment. He's the one who kills
Again, another part of that script, right? Like they even managed to give him an arc, right?
Yeah,
Because
oh, yeah, the
he's just
super
like,
has
why
one.
are you working the desk job? He's like, I shot a kid, and it was just like, and then
Argyle gets his own shot too. Like, going back to Argyle real quick, and then we can move into brilliant moments. But the other thing that I want to talk about is like the way that it even Argyle is I think one of the best examples of how efficient this script is, right? Because everything in the open gets set up really efficiently from the script perspective. Even things like Argyle being a cool guy and saying like, "Hey man, I'll wait for you. Like, go if it works out with your wife, let me know and then I'll take off, but I'll wait until then." And that, like, not only does it make Argyle an ally for the whole movie, and it gives us an opportunity to hear from McClane and get some more exposition, but it also locks him there. Like, it gives him a real ironclad reason to be there for the events of this movie. And it does it all in just like a casual, like, "Hey man, I'll be in a parking garage. Let me know when it's
also
when it's
very
cool to
nice
go."
of Argyle.
yeah,
Like he's
Yeah.
sitting there like the whole night.
He's a good guy.
I'm kicking it down in the garage. What's the word with you and your lady, man?
All right, let's get into some brilliant moments. In talking about how tight the script is, like from a production standpoint as well, this movie is shot so impeccably. It's so well staged. Like the camera movement. We talked about Seven Samurai way back at the beginning of this series, and it being sort of like how did you put it, Cal? A foundational text for action movies. I think Die Hard might be the second edition of.
I would agree with that.
textbook, right? Like it's because even in the non-action beats, like the way this movie opens. Number one, it opens on a shot of his hand with the wedding ring. It's his left hand with the wedding ring, but
Correct.
like white knuckling an armrest on the plane. And ostensibly it's about him being afraid of flying. But the first image we see is like tension and a wedding ring. But even as he's getting off the plane, there's, the girl running past him, and he like follows the girl. So before we even get to that part, there's the flight attendant that they make eyes at each other. And so it's like immediately we know that Bruce Willis is like, or John McClane is
A cool guy who gets chicks.
an attractive, cool
Yeah.
guy. Yeah. But there's also things like even when the luggage carts move past camera to motivate a camera move to land on the sign that Argyle's holding with McClane's name on it, and then pan up to Argyle. And that's how we meet Argyle. Like, all of the movement is like in what seem like unimportant scenes, but like it's the fact that we're doing that early in the movie, and they go out of their way to make sure that there's interesting, motivated movement for the camera in this first couple of minutes of the movie. Because they do the same thing when they go into Nakatomi Plaza, and we're looking down over Takagi's shoulder as he's talking to the crowd, but then like the focus shifts to Holly making copies and then walking back to her office through the thing, and the way that the camera follows her is really impressive, and it really reminded me of Kurosawa. Like I'm not about to
No,
put
do it.
John
Do
McTiernan in the
it.
same category, but I will briefly for this moment, because like the camera movement in this opening couple of minutes is so good and so sharp, and even when she walks to her office, it's done in such a way where they walk into the room with the side of the door with her name on it, like her maiden name on it, that the camera is able to pause for a moment and float past her name and see, or that's when McClane is walking in, because that's the thing that's stuck in his craw about the name. But like every little bit of smart camera movement is also doing that exposition heavy lifting, right? Like we don't have to spend pages talking about their marriage and what happened and all that stuff. And we do that. And it's so efficient that they're actually talking on top of each other when they finally do start talking about their marriage, which I think is a great scene, because they're just like both barking at each other at the same time. The camera movement in the first couple of minutes of this movie is so good, and it sets up how they're going to choreograph the action later in the movie, even though it's just expository non-action stuff. It's an incredible way to start this movie.
Don't forget, it's kind of like the same thing, right, with the feet as well. Which also kudos to the script of just like he's sitting next to the guy and he's just like, you know what I do to feel grounded? I just like make fists of my toes.
It's a bizarre thing to say to a stranger, by the way.
Fists toes. But like he's just like, that's like, and like such an inconsequential line. And then it's just like, that son of a bitch was right. And that line solely exists to make sure that John McClane is not wearing shoes the moment shit hits the fan. And like it starts on the same kind of shot. It's like that close up on it, and then you just hear the gunshots, and it's now this guy doesn't even have shoes, and he has to take out this like dozen terrorists.
But I also like that it follows Holly so much. That's actually something that I really forgot. I thought it took us longer to be introduced to Holly before I rewatched it for this episode. We get to know her right away, and we see her day-to-day life. Like, this could have been a movie where you just kind of see her as the wife who sacrificed their family, but you see how important she is and how, like, in her element she is immediately.
If this isn't a movie about their marriage, who cares?
Well, that's why I was so surprised.
Like the action,
when you said it wasn't in the book.
The action can be as good as anything, but like, and supposedly D'Souza got into an argument with his wife about I think this came from one of my ASC articles that I always try to find before we shoot these things, but like apparently D'Souza got into an argument with his wife and then almost got into a car accident or something like that on his way home. And then he got the idea of a tragedy happening before you had a chance to apologize to your spouse.
That's kind of sweet.
And like that's when he went back and added all that stuff in, right? Like I think it was D'Souza or was the other guy that wrote it. That Jeb Stewart might have done that. Getting my wires crossed there. But no, if this movie isn't about their marriage, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how good Hans Gruber is. It's just like, it's just an action happening and whatever, and you're going to forget about it. But like the stakes of it being set up visually right out of the gate with just that like white knuckling with the wedding ring on, like that was a choice to do that left hand.
Well, again, that's what kind of proved me wrong and proved me to like stop being a brat about it is Hans Gruber. And yes, the whole marriage subplot. Like you kind of like, I think when you hear about Die Hard your whole life, you're expecting it to be a very one-dimensional dude bro killing people in a building, but you don't really expect to see a marriage and the husband grappling with his masculinity all of a sudden because his wife is making more money than him, but you also kind of side with her, but also you can see his point. Like it's very. Yeah. I don't know. It also just feels very organic. Their argument is so good.
No, it feels like a legit married couple argument, particularly one marriage that's on the rocks like theirs is. But the other thing that the movie does, it makes a point, as much as it makes a point to have McClane be an attractive man because the flight attendant is, hey, at the beginning. But like they do the same thing for Holly with Ellis. Ellis is working hard to get time with Holly.
Well, that also does gross. The double whammy of letting you know that Ellis is a jerk.
Yeah, he is not an option.
Yeah,
and that's the funny thing too is like as to juxtapose him as a romantic rival with McClane, right? With John, like Ellis is not an option for Holly, and we know that. We can tell that. But we do know that Holly has suitors. Like it's not a one-sided thing here. Like, and then looking ahead at all the other sequels to know that McClane never really learned or changed or any of that, like their marriage never recovers.
But that also tracks. Like he's such an asshole. Like, I completely believe that.
I mean, he's always that quintessential cop, right? That's just like born to be alone, just like
set in his ways.
A do-gooder that will never, that can never like directly help an individual in a relationship, but is just like a force of nature meant to, do right.
Well, I think you see that in his conversations with Powell too. He kind of like makes fun of him a little bit for being like a paper pusher on like a desk jockey. It's like, you don't need to be out there shooting people.
You got flat feet.
Hey, guy on a walkie-talkie I've never met before. Why you such a wuss?
Yeah, why don't you out there on the streets, man?
When Hans and his team are pulling up initially, the music that's the first part where you really notice a version of Ode to Joy. It's like a minor key version of it, or it's a more villainous sounding, ominous sounding version, but it is very much bum 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 bum, like it's in there. Mm-hmm. And that the fact that Christmas music plays such a big part in this movie, there are shades of that because there's a string quartet or something like that in the Christmas Party that's also playing it, and then of course it's a big moment later when they finally get the get the safe, the vault open. But Ode to Joy showing up in like a weird sort of minor key in this early moment, I think because the soundtrack, the score of this film, I think is incredible all the way through, and a lot of it uses some of that classic kind of Strauss and all of that stuff. Is like all of that stuff is kind of like woven in there, but it's just a real smart, clever use of music that we all know about.
Like you said, we're not going to have the world's dumbest discussion of whether or not it's a Christmas movie. But I will say that the Christmas setting actually does add to it in a way that I really enjoy, again, on a rewatch. Because I think when you think of Christmas, a lot of the time you think of family, you think of kids waiting for their parents to come home. And it does go out of its way, like you said, in the music, in the little decorations to constantly remind you it's Christmas time. And I enjoy that. Didn't have to do that.
Yeah, but Michael Kamen, the way that he scored this movie is, I think, real good.
Oh, 100%. And it's like properly 80s at some points. And yeah, no, it's great.
Apparently, the only bit that wasn't him is the at the moment we already talked about where Al Powell gets his arc, where he kills Carl at the end. That's apparently some like unused music from Aliens, actually.
Really?
It's
What?
some James Horner music. Yeah.
That's wild.
Because if you go back and listen to that, it's the most heroic piece of music in the entire movie. Like the only bit of like big hero moment music cue is when Al shoots.
Because he's
Carl.
the hero of the movie, damn it.
Yeah, there's that. But, apparently McTiernan didn't like they used that bit of music to temp score the movie. And apparently they just never found one that they liked better. And so they left it in. But it doesn't match the rest of the score, even a little bit. Like it really doesn't. It works for the moment, and it's this big sweeping hero kind of music cue, but it doesn't match the rest of the music because it wasn't written by the same guy.
That's actually so funny.
You know what? Fun fact, like just aside here that I feel like died with the 80s, but like the more I watch, like when I was watching it this time, I'm like, that doesn't happen anymore. Like guys that just put like Playboy posters some randomly in spaces that like normal people just don't go anymore.
That was such a random little
Yeah.
the way he touches it too.
Yeah, because every
it
time he
happens-
looks by it, he's just like, yeah.
That's a naked chick.
Yeah.
Nice
Well,
to see it.
There's the moment where everybody's taking over. Like he runs upstairs and he's hiding from all the gunfire that's happening downstairs, and he's trying to figure out what am I gonna do? Oh my god! And he just kind of spaces out, and it cuts to what he's looking at, and there's a woman, like a half naked woman, in the hotel across the street, and he just loses his train of thought because he's looking at that, like, which is such a funny little. It's the other thing about this movie is it never loses a sense of humor. Like
No,
it
it's
always,
genuinely very funny.
It always takes a moment. It always takes a moment to diffuse some of what's going on with the joke. And, that's where, let's talk about Deputy Chief Dwayne T. Robinson and how bad he sucks, but in such a funny way. Like he's awful, but he's hilarious. Like he's got two of the best lines in the whole movie that happen fairly close together towards the end. It's when the helicopter explodes and he's like, oh, we're gonna need some more FBI guys, I guess. And then when Hans is, they break away from Hans falling off the building. The bad guy of the movie is dying, and they cut away from it to see Dwayne T. Robinson say, "I hope that's not a hostage." And it's such a funny line, but it's happening right in the middle of the most climactic moment in the entire movie, which is, their commitment to constantly, even the FBI guys, Johnsons, the two Johnsons, when Robert Davi's like, it's just like Saigon, huh, Slick? And he's like, I was in middle school, dickhead.
Yeah, that is such a great line.
It's so good, but it's just in the middle of all these people double crossing each other, and like they're making jokes like that. It's so good.
McClane, he is an asshole, but he is funny at times.
9 million terrorists in the world, and I gotta kill one with feet smaller than my sister.
You guys got another moment?
I feel like my next one, like chronologically, is after McClane kills one of the terrorists, takes his weapons, and then you get that great moment of the humor that now I have a machine gun. And the way that Alan Rickman says, ho, ho, ho.
Ho.
Yeah, that's better. It's so good.
The one note I have about Alan Rickman is his German accent really comes and goes. But it's there when he wants to make a point out of it. The ho, ho, ho is It's great.
just chewing on that scenery. But I also think that's where you kind of start to get like, you start to really understand McClane, I think, where it's like, he could have just like not been, he could have been, I think it would have been smarter not to taunt what he thinks then is a terrorist. But he's going to taunt him anyway, because he's just a jerk.
And they give him that moment right before, he's trying on the shoes, and they give him that moment right before he gets the idea to watch him come up with the idea to do it, right? And he's got that sort of shit-eating grin on his face. He's like, yeah, this is going to be funny. Which is another like bit from the book, he wrote a note. In the book, he writes a note that says, now we have a machine gun, trying to make the terrorists think
There's
that
more than one.
more than just one of him. Yeah.
See, that's
So
smarter.
there was like a tactical plan to do that. But like, this is more of a like, hey, I'm here screwing with you guys. He's just kind of poking at him, which I guess has its own strategy. But
I wish they kept that from the book. That is so smart. Now we have a machine gun. That is so good to make him think that.
that's not John's style, though.
That's true. He's
Like,
not
that would-
like
it
he's
wouldn't make
he's
sense
not a
with
schemer
McClane.
in the movie, really.
Besides, what are multiple people going to do with one machine gun?
I mean,
Exactly.
Like, what, are they going to share it? Yeah.
yeah, still. But no, you're
No,
right.
it's my
it
turn
wouldn't.
to use the machine gun.
It really just cause fights, I feel, which you don't want with a machine gun. No, but like I think you are right. He's really not much of a schemer. He's just a cowboy.
I'm also a big fan of the scene where him and John meet for the first time, and it's basically like the entire premise of The Usual Suspects, like just in that like one moment, because they're like, he's just like looking at the sign and he sees Clay, and it's just like WM Clay, so he knows he's like with them.
Well, also Clay seems like the most harmless name he could have chosen too. Like that felt very intentional.
Do we want to talk about these like shootouts specifically, or just in general? And
There's a lot of shootouts.
Because there are a ton of shootouts.
Yeah.
The shootouts are they're all pretty great.
They're all so well done, and they're like the ones that like stand up to me is especially the ones where he's on his like back foot, right? Where it's either like they're so well plotted out and designed, and it's just using the mise-en-scène perfectly and like the design of the world. Specifically when Hans Gruber like after they meet and he's like, he doesn't have any shoes, shoot the glass, and then they're just like fight, and then he has to like pick it out. Like that one's a great one. The scene where it's just him and that one guy.
Well, before we get off of the shoot the glass, because that was one that I flagged too. Like it's another one of these great camera work scenes, and like getting Hans to come up with the idea to shoot the glass is all done with pans and tilts and camera moves, right? Because it's like, he looks and there's performance there. Like Alan Rickman gets the idea and there, he does that. But then there's like this great little swoop and tilt into a close up. And then there's like shattered glass, tilt down to blood in it. And like all of these little puzzle pieces slowly get put together with the camera work and the staging of it, that it's, exactly what he's about to do. And it's camera work that does it.
It's great. Like that one's really good. Also the one where he shoots the guy over the table and he's like, if you ever get the chance to kill someone, don't hesitate. And it's just like,
well, that's the other thing. They're all peppered with
Thanks
these
for
little
the
like
advice.
badass guy lines.
Thanks for the advice, asshole.
Yeah.
Like the welcome to the party, pal. That's one I flagged.
Like so many hot fuzz shots lifted from this movie. Clint, I can't believe you haven't brought it up yet. Did you read the American Cinematographer article about this?
This needs to be a segment.
About which one?
About Die Hard.
It was with Richard Edlund. Which I never think about this as a VFX movie at all. And it wasn't until I was prepping for this episode that I realized even Richard Edlund even worked on this. Like Raiders of the Lost Ark and Star Wars, Richard Edlund did the VFX for this movie and got nominated for an Academy Award for it too. Like it's there's 30 some odd FX shots, I think is what I read, 35 or 40, and which is light by today's standards.
It's even kind of light by their standards too. Like it's very selective, because it's like, the helicopters blowing up when they blow up the roof. It's a lot of that, and it looks so good.
With a helicopter coming out of the fireball and rolling off the roof and then exploding again, like that was a miniature.
Yeah.
That was all done in camera, live, and as a miniature.
Yeah, they had four, like the fact
great.
that they're dropping like $4,000 on like it was like $4,000 a reset or something like that, because like those
Per model.
yeah,
Yeah.
because like those remote control helicopters were like $4,000 a pop, so they had like 4 of them or 3 of them, and they got it on the second take. And it's crazy to think that it's just like Like now that shit's like done with computers, but this is like bowling. You know, it's like we could set up, we're going to try and set up these pins in the perfect way, and we only have 3 balls to roll a strike. And like they're able to do it. It's nuts.
And they also did the one that I read about too was the shot where he throws the explosives down the elevator shaft. And there's a shot, I don't think it's a whole second, but it's a shot where you see the 3rd floor exploding from the outside of the building.
Yeah.
And they went and shot some test footage of different explosions to put on top of there for the effect. And they just shot it as test footage, so it wasn't like pristine, but they still shot it in front of a mat or whatever. And the one that McTiernan liked, he was like, "Oh yeah, let's use that one." He's like, "Well, it's just a test footage." He's like, "Well, why can't you use it? Just use that one." And there was like too much smoke in it, so they couldn't pull a clean mat. So there was like this big transparent hole right in the middle of it. So they had to go and find like a dozen other explosions to grab like 2 frames of this one and 2 frames of that one and like cobble it all together for what's essentially like a 38 some odd frames worth of explosion. But that was apparently, according to Richard Edlund, that was the hardest shot in the whole movie. Just barely in front of the last shot when they're panning. It's not the last shot of the movie, but when they're after Gruber falls off and they're outside and we pan down from the top of the building, which is all exploded, all the way down to all the chaos on the streets and the bearer bonds are floating. It's snowing, like with the money is floating down from the, that was the top of the building was the miniature. And then the lower half of the building is like, and they shot the shot of the lower half. They just kind of did wild where they tilted down and then kind of pan over. And it's like this big expansive shot, but they had to match that tilt perfectly on footage of the miniature. First of all, they had to get the scale right to put the camera in the same spot to make the miniature look like the same size as this one. And they're shooting it all on 65 millimeters, so they have a little bit of wiggle room. But they had to find a place to cut it together. Apparently, there were also people that were so tired, people that worked in Fox Plaza that were so tired of this movie that they refused to turn off their office lights for the movie. And so the lights that are on in there, like they had to deal with those too, because they had to paint some out and paint some back on, because like the one spot where they found the right seam to marry those 2 shots, there were like lights that were screwing it up. So they had to like, it was everything. It was one of these, Richard Edlund talks about it in the article. He's like, you never know what the hardest shot of any given movie is going to be. Like it's going to be one that you didn't expect.
You know what else I appreciate too of like the scale of this? You don't see this anymore in movies, but guys falling from buildings and them actually doing it. Like,
oh yeah,
the long lens shot of the stuntman that's being Gruber, it takes like 3-4 seconds for him to like fall out of frame.
He falls a long way.
Yeah,
he falls a very long way.
That realism just can't be duplicated with computers, I don't think. Because it's just like, damn, this dude is falling.
Yeah.
Far. 30 foot, probably like what, 20, 30 stories?
At that point, though, you love to see it.
Yeah.
He's spent a whole movie being a not good guy.
But even like this shot here, the slow motion shot looking down at Hans falling. The really funny story, we included this in our things you didn't know from years ago, so I'm apologizing for if I'm blowing another torf. But that, obviously Rickman's a great actor. And so, hey, be surprised when you start falling is not a thing he's incapable of. But when they were shooting, because he fell about 25 feet onto a big blue screen inflatable bag, right? So he actually did fall about 25 or 30 feet, supposedly. The rumor is that we're gonna say 3, 2, 1, and then drop you. Okay, are you ready? And they go 3, 2, and then dropped him. So like it's legit surprise when he's like, oh. Like it's
such a good face too. I will say the one thing that
I hope that's not a hostage.
That like looking at his face, looking down at Hans is the one thing that kind of doesn't hold up in terms of feeling a little green screeny. But at this point, it's so iconic that you can't really nitpick it. So
they shot it in. I mean, it's also 10 times slower than real life. So like that never quite. That always bumps like realism, right? Like when you shoot at 300 frames a second or whatever. Like, which again, like. My favorite thing to say, be where you are. Like we know that we're doing this. We know what this is going to look like. And a way to hide some of these seams is to shoot it in slow motion because, mentally we're not going to go there with it completely. But
Yeah, the whole ending sequence was on my list.
in what sense? Just because it's great, or
Well,
was
I
there
like the
something
lead.
specific
I like
about-
the lead up to it. I guess we hadn't talked about that. Where you just, I appreciate a hero. It's one of the reasons I like Kill Bill. When you watch them go through so much physically, and they're not a superhero, they're just a person. And then when you see them, they're beaten down and battered down. So we get that reveal with John McClane and Holly seeing him, and the "Hi, honey," another great line.
Honey. Yeah.
It's so good.
The last 20 minutes of it or so, from about an hour 50, hour 40 something, when he finds the explosives on the roof and then jumps down onto the radio and he starts to try to do the radio, but then Carl is right there. From that moment to the end is an absolute sprint. Like it really, like the pace of the last act of this film is really something else. Cause like the moment right before that is him like pulling glass out of his foot in the bathroom and trying and giving Al a message to give to Holly if he doesn't make it, and that. And then it goes into proper act 3, and it is just a sprint. Like it's all punching and kicking and shooting and explosions, and like that's when jumping off the building with the fire hose and almost getting pulled out of the window by the fire hose, which is a great little beat. But it's a wonderful little sprint.
It is.
And even the music doesn't let up too. The music shifts into that like do kind of like, it never lets you take a breath.
The other thing on my list is I just really appreciate Ellis as a character and how he's the 80s personified and just such a, what do we call it? A slimeball? A scumbag? I feel like he's
Scumbag?
Yeah, I feel like he's a top.
He's a good scumbag.
He's a great scumbag. My friend described it as he is every character who thinks they can do it, or every viewer who thinks they can do what McClane can do. It's like, oh yeah, I could do that. No, you can't. And neither
Yeah.
can Ellis.
Yeah, it's one of those like we all would like to be McClane,
Yeah.
but really we're Ellis.
Yeah, exactly.
No, but the moment where he goes in to see Hans, and that moment works so well because like he thinks he's in charge, but then also Hans knows that Hans is in charge, and then McClane sees exactly what's happening from both perspectives, and there's nothing to be like. It's a great moment narratively because it does a few things for Hans and what he's willing to do. It does it for the cops outside, Al and Dwayne are hearing this. It tells them something about McClane, and they react to it different ways. Like that's the other thing about it. And this scene is kind of the crux of one of these moments because we know everybody so well at this point.
Yeah.
And so like we know their perspectives and we know what they're trying to do, and we can see this coming a mile away. And then it happens and it still lands great.
Like you're right, no one's surprising here, but it does just give Hans and McClane, I think, more room to show their stuff. Hans to show how smart he is, and McClane to be a hero and be like, oh, let's get out of there.
And this is the other great thing about this script too, is like the way that it teaches us about the characters, but it's also teaching the characters things along the way. Because once the building half blows up, the C4 blows everything up. Like you've got Dwayne T. Robinson just being an idiot. You got Al Powell. We know that he's one of the good guys because he's standing up to his boss. Hans's plan is underway and he's having to pivot a little bit because of John, and John is trying to stand in front of everything Hans is trying to do. Thornburg is there now with his camera crew, and you see him, oh, tell me you got that. Like after it all happened, like so many pieces are in the right place. And the whole back half of this movie, like we know exactly who is where and who's watching and how they're reacting to all of this stuff and what their goals are. Because there's a lot going on in this movie. Because meanwhile, Thornburg goes and finds... his ambition sends him to like threaten the INS on Holly's housekeeper to barge in to exploit Holly and John's kids for his own news thing.
I really forget how much is going on in this movie.
That guy is such a piece of shit.
There's so much happening.
Yeah, he has such a great I'm a piece of shit through multiple movies. Because don't forget, he's a core part of Die Hard 2 too for some reason.
And I love that he's got a restraining order against Holly. Die Hard 2, because he gets punched in the face at the end of this. But even that is there. Even that is there for if you want to think about all of these bits and pieces as like reverse engineering from where they need to end up. Like that is there for Holly to see her kids on TV and react to it so that Alan Rickman knows who she is. Like that is the point of Thornburg. But meanwhile, Thornburg has his own like rich. The fact that we meet him and he's arguing about a dinner reservation is perfect. Like he's got his own whole thing going, but he's really just there for that moment in the end so that Hans knows who Holly is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. And like what's also great about like that too when it culminates is like everybody is kind of a selfish piece of shit at the whole time, right? Like with the exception of like
It's just Al. Al's the only good dude in the whole movie.
Al's like cuz like
We love Al.
so it's like everybody's just being selfish, right? Like the chief of police guy, he's just like, no, this is my scene, da da da. And then like then once the plan starts to unravel, you begin to realize that Hans Gruber is willing to sacrifice everybody so he can get away. And at the same time, the feds are just like, I'm willing to sacrifice 20% of them. And he's just like
20% of the hostages. Yeah, I can live with that.
Yeah. It's just like no one cares.
It's an A7 scenario or whatever.
No one cares about these people.
Well, also, wouldn't the Fed see it coming that turning off electricity would maybe be a bad thing? Like, that's so crazy to me that no one thought that might be a part of the villain's plan.
Well, no one knew what the villain's plan was. They
I
thought,
guess.
like they thought they were terrorists. Remember,
Yeah.
like that's what's so great about it is because he's like posing as a terrorist, but really he just. And why are they keeping $600 million of bearer bonds in the basement anyway?
That's also silly.
yeah.
Don't do that.
Can you buy cocaine with bearer bonds?
I mean, Ellis sure.
Ellis
Ellis,
seems
like- drug
Ellis
dealer.
had enough. How high was Ellis when
seems like he can.
How high was Ellis when he died? Because he's definitely like doing a couple of bumps.
It was the Christmas party,
As a
man.
hostage.
They were having a ball.
These movies that I know so well are always harder to prep for because it's hard to find new stuff to talk about. But like, is there anything else that you guys flagged that you want to talk about?
The only thing I flagged like as a timestamp was the conversation, the first conversation I think between Hans and McClane, where Hans is doing that. You're just an American who's seen too many action movies, and he rattles off the John Wayne and yeah, McClane gets his nice little line of I actually am partial Roy Rogers. That's one of my favorite little moments of dialogue and character.
Pretty resourceful for a security guard.
so good.
That's also one of the McClane being cool for the sake of being cool moments, which is fine.
Do you know how many times, like literally every year, when it's just like there's a frenzy at work that we all need to solve, and like I eventually have to rope somebody into it, and like it's just like, hey, you got to start working on this, and then I just send the welcome to the party pal gif.
Yeah.
No, but this
that's what
movie has been
anytime
memed
somebody-
to filth. Like it's an easy movie to meme.
Anytime somebody gets pulled into like, event planning kind of near the
Welcome to the party pal.
We haven't actually talked about the yippee-ki-yay melon farmer moment, which I actually think is kind of like.
we have not.
But the funny thing is, again, I've talked a lot about how I like resented this movie most of my life. When I actually watched, that was one thing that I found a little underwhelming. I was like, I expected it to be more of like a yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Kind of comes more into its own in 2. They say it knowing, and then they realize that this like movie was a hit, and then they have to like they are now consciously writing to the yippee-ki-yay moment in every
I think
other
that's
movie.
maybe what immortalized it more than the actual movie.
It was a great button for that one conversation, right?
Yeah.
Like he's talking about like you just think you're a cowboy, and it's him being a smart ass back to Hans.
Yeah.
And it's a great button for that one conversation. But listen, it's a very fun thing to say. The fact that people latch onto it is not. But yeah, Callie, to your point, it becomes a thing that you write to.
Yeah.
Like it becomes that bigger moment, Alex, that you were expecting in this. In later Die
Does
Hards.
Die Hard 2 have the best yippee-ki-yay motherfucker moment? Because
It's definitely better than this
I'm
one.
trying to think of 3's, but 2's is like he's laying on the tarmac, he like lights the lighter and then just drops it, and then it lights the fuel that like ignites as the plane is taking off, right? So like the flame actually climbs the falling fuel to like blow up the plane.
That's what I'm saying. I feel like that
I think that
probably
might
did
be
more
the
to
best. I think that
immortalize
might be
it.
the best one.
Yeah, and considering that these two, that Die Hard and Die Hard 2 came out so close together, like, yeah, I think that's the yippee-ki-yay melon farmer.
The With a Vengeance yippee-ki-yay melon farmer, I think, was also just at the end. It was in that same moment in the structure of the movie, right? Because like they have to go track down Simon Gruber up in Canada or whatever, and he has to shoot a power line that'll get tangled in the helicopter that Simon Gruber's in or whatever, which is like, it doesn't really do anything. Nobody hears it. Like it's very specifically just for him, which is a thing that I think it makes it work less, and in the same way as Die Hard 2. And like this one was very pointedly directed at Hans, and it lands on Hans, and like Hans has to live with that now. And he's like, it gives Hans a sense of who he's dealing with. Whereas every other time it's said, like, it's not said for anybody's benefit. It's just John McClane's like, this is a fun thing I say now, which is kind of funny.
I think that in this movie, at least, Hans might have had the better delivery on Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker, at the end. But that's...
Yeah, well, that's where the German accent comes back for Rickman.
It does
and it
come
works overtime on that. It's like...
What was it you said to me before? Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
Okay, let's do movie list. So we've covered it pretty well over the years. We did a things you didn't know about it. We did a what's the difference about it. Some homemade movie stuff. We also once had an elevator technician come in to talk about how realistic the movie is.
That's cute of us.
It's a very short-lived series that we did in the Mashable days. We did that with a couple movies. It was kind of fun. But is also the top 10 specific subgenres of all time, which of course was my sort of backdoor Clint's personal top 10 episode. In like a bottle episode of an action movie, a really contained action movie I love those. Top 5 holiday movies. It was in the thumbnail of that, so that settles everything.
Yep.
The 10 best structured movies of all time. It's in the thumbnail of that one too. McClane gets a mention in the top 10 heroes of all time. Both times we've done it. He didn't earn the spot. I think the everyman that kind of takes a licking and keeps on ticking, we gave that to Indiana Jones. But McClane is kind of very, very much in that same mold. I didn't look up if I can't imagine Hans Gruber is not in.
That's
Villains.
what I was gonna say.
No, there's
that would be a huge oversight.
No way.
He's got to be. If he's not, let me take this opportunity to gaslight all of you into saying that he is. Or I'll make another villains list and it's just all Alan Rickman, and we'll talk about Quigley Down Under too. But are there any other movie lists that this needs to go on?
I'm just gonna bring. I still feel like we should do a best movie years list with 88 on it.
88's good. Well, 87 was pretty good too. Like there's a bunch of because I remember we rattled off between 2017 and 2018. Like there were so many 30th anniversaries that we couldn't ignore. All from 87 and 88. So there's a lot of bangers in those 2 years.
I like that we all know that because we have to keep track with the 30th anniversary stuff.
Right. Because work.
The one thing I wanted to say is like this just unambiguously deserves to be on top 10 action movies of all time. Like if that was ever,
I mean, it's influential as hell. Yeah.
on the while we're not going to compare John McTiernan to Akira Kurosawa, we can definitely hold Die Hard up to Seven Samurai.
I think in that case we all just say this wouldn't exist without Kurosawa, and
It wouldn't. But this is like the next chapter in it. Right?
Sure.
This is like another. This is at least the lobby of the building that is built on the foundation of Seven Samurai.
Sure.
100%. I mean, that's like and it was honestly watching it again this time that you kind of realize how much it owes to Seven Samurai, and all of the same things that we talked about in Seven Samurai, sort of bear out because of movies like Die Hard. Yeah. Like we want to talk about Seven Samurai being the most influential movie for action films. Then like, Die Hard is the one that's sort of reaping the benefits of that.
Yeah.
All right. Well, shall we torf?
Let's tour. And I checked it. We didn't really blow that many, surprisingly. Shout out to Tayo finding the deep cuts.
Good job, Tayo. Way to go,
We're
man.
going to stump you guys on this one because we haven't been lately. All right. Torf number 1. The title of Die Hard came from Lethal Weapon writer Shane Black. True or false?
Oh, that's a good one. I'm going to go with,
yeah.
I'm going to go false.
I'll go true. This is one that I haven't actually heard before. But I'm going to go true because I feel like there was a lot of, it was kind of an incestuous crowd with action writers and directors and stars and stuff in the late 80s and early 90s because McTiernan and Black they worked together on Last Action Hero just a couple years later, so it wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah, they're buds.
So true.
All right. Clint's right. That is true. It was originally his title for The Last Boy Scout, but producer Joel Silver...
and Predator. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Predator.
I skipped straight ahead to Last Action Hero, but he was in Predator,
Yep.
for Christ's sake.
Yeah, but producer Joel Silver convinced him to hand it over while they were working together on Predator. And this is a fun fact.
I tell you what.
What?
This movie called Nothing Lasts Forever is a real drag.
Yeah.
I don't like that even a little bit.
Well, hold on. That's the other part of this torf that I think is really funny. Roderick Thorpe, author of the source material Nothing Lasts Forever, was furious about the name change. He confronted Silver, who told him, the best thing that ever happened to your book is this movie.
And he's right.
He's right. Like,
Yeah, that's great.
Speaking of like,
I love that dismissive, like, dude, sit down.
I think Die Hard is cooler than Nothing Lasts
Die Hard is
Forever.
one of the coolest
It's
titles
so
ever.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's so cool.
Yeah.
Just catchy. All right.
It was such a blunt
Yeah.
kind of instrument of a title, you know?
Well, I think that's why it's become a genre.
Same as Lethal
it's like
Weapon.
why we say like, oh yeah, it's Die Hard on a boat, like because it's easy to say.
You talking about Under Siege or Speed 2 Cruise?
I was
Yes.
just going to say, what about Speed? Speed's also...
Yeah. Mm-hmm. It's
Speed is Die Hard on a bus.
Die Hard
Yeah,
bus.
Die Hard and Bus.
Under Siege was Die Hard on a Navy
on a boat.
Speed 2, Die Hard on a cruise ship.
See, it's a proven formula. All right, Torf number 2. Self-conscious about his appearance, Bruce Willis wore fake feet during production. True or false?
Wasn't because it was self-conscious, but he did wear fake feet.
Is that just something you know?
Fake shoes.
Yeah, like they were like shoes. But
So-
I know
so
for,
false.
I know,
Yeah, he
I know
wasn't.
for a fact that he wore fake
Okay,
feet.
yeah, that's false, and it is because he did wear fake
Well,
feet.
there's so much glass.
Yeah, you kind of have to. I feel like SAG might be up in arms about that if he didn't.
They were reused years later as Hobbit feet, though.
All right, Torf number 3. Clint Eastwood once owned the film rights to Die Hard.
I think that's true. This is very Dirty Harry-esque.
To Die Hard or to Nothing Lasts Forever?
Nothing lasts forever.
I bet
Nothing lasts forever.
Yeah, I'll go true. I bet he owned the rights to that. He probably saw Sinatra horning in on his territory and was like, "Give me the sequel."
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, he held the rights to the film in the early 80s, but as often the case, the project never came to fruition. And yes, before Eastwood, the film was originally meant for Sinatra, as we have covered.
Sinatra, yeah, he already played the detective.
That what a weird thing that would have been if this was like a Dirty Harry sequel, where it's like Dirty Harry not in San Francisco. He's just stuck in his ex-wife's workplace. Asking everybody
It
if they
would've worked, I
feel,
think.
asking everybody
It
if
would've
they
been
feel
different.
lucky.
Stuck at your ex-wife's office Christmas party. Cool.
All right, Torf number 4. I'm surprised we really didn't blow through a lot. Like again, shout out to Tayo. When the film was released,
us.
yeah, good for us. When the film was released in Germany, the terrorist nationality was changed from German to Russian, and the German dialogue was redubbed.
True.
I'd also like to believe that's why they gave Alan Rickman the just don't like really
Don't be
dial
that
in the
German. So this is a tricky one. It is false.
Oh.
Okay, let me go through because Tayo's really put
because they
some.
were Latvian.
There's a few things in this one. When the film was released in Germany, the terrorist nationality was changed from German to European, which okay, sure.
Vaguely European.
Yeah, vaguely
Great.
European. The dialogue wasn't redubbed because it mostly consisted of incoherent gibberish, which is funny. And even though many of the terrorists were portrayed as German, none of the actors could speak the language fluently.
Well, there you go.
Kind of feel that with Alan Rickman.
Well, I mean, the terrorists were all just kind of European.
Like they can kind of get away with it, or just European.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, last Torf. Die Hard was originally intended to take place over 3 days. True or false?
I don't know that one. I never read the book.
Well,
so
I'm gonna go.
I'm gonna go false because it seems
yeah. Well, now I'm trying to think of what the book was. I don't remember if that took place over a longer period of time, but I'm trying to think if they would have made it last 3 days, it would have been to deal with the marriage stuff.
Right.
But no, false. Always one night.
Man, we're crushing it. That one's true.
Whoa.
Oh man.
Yeah, the script was originally planned for the hostage situation to span 3 days. However, John McTiernan, inspired by Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, of all things, decided the film should unfold over the course of one single night. Thanks, Shakespeare.
Wow.
You know, these torfs that sound like bad ideas, you'd think I'd be in the habit now. I was like, yeah, no, that's a bad idea, and I'm glad they changed
Yeah.
it. So, true.
Yeah, it would have been way worse.
Yeah.
But that's Torf.
Far out.
All right. Good Torf.
Good Torf. That was an exceptional Torf, Tayo. Again, good job.
That was, really good. Good job, Tayo. It was a good mix of stuff we didn't know and not horribly tricky for the sake of it stuff.
He said thanks.
Real solid. Okay, well, who's your MVP then?
I've made no secret of it. It's Alan Rickman for me.
I feel like none of us have.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
Rickman.
Yeah.
This movie would not be anything like a hero was only as good as his villain, and this is the one of the best ones.
You know, you at the beginning of the episode listed off the murderer's row of people who could have played McClane, and I think there are not to say that Bruce Willis didn't do a great job, but I think this movie could be a success with him replaced. I can't say the same for Hans Gruber. No. I can't see a single other soul on the earth playing it like Alan Rickman played it as well as he did. It elevates the whole thing. I can't imagine this movie without him.
Couldn't disagree less. More? Less. Yeah.
It's an odd structure.
I like committing. I like how you said the wrong thing, but you committed to it.
Still
You
went to
didn't
the
go
end of the
backwards.
sentence.
And you just rethought the back half of your sentence to fit the front half. I couldn't disagree more. Less? What? He's so good, and if we don't like him, and if he doesn't win us over, if he's not that charismatic, then it's just a bunch of action stuff that happens to a guy that doesn't really change.
Yeah.
And I think it starts to kind of blend in with every other action thing. So it's Rickman, full stop.
Yeah. McTiernan
real
crushed it.
I think McTiernan in the script come in second.
Exactly.
Yeah.
This is one of those movies where everybody's doing a great job. From Jan de Bont and Michael Kamen and McTiernan and Bruce Willis and all of the casting director destroyed this movie, by the way, with all of those all the fun role players that are kind of also there. But it's Rickman for sure.
In Canada, the 5 imprisoned leaders of Liberté de Quebec. In Sri Lanka, the 9 members of the Asian Dawn. I read about them in Time magazine.
Cal, I haven't had you introduce this segment in a while, so do we have time for one more segment, you think?
Of course we do. There's a lot of bad movies with Nicolas Cage, but no movie is worse because Nicolas Cage is in it. If Nicolas Cage was in Die Hard, who would he be? And this, to me, is the most obvious of obvious things, because considering that in 1988, the same year that Vampire's Kiss came out, you could have taken Peter Lowe from Vampire's Kiss, called him Ellis, and had a similarly memorable performance, because they're both playing the same kind of yuppie douchebag.
The scene where he says, "Hans, Blibby, I'm your white knight." That's Nicolas Cage.
I would pay a lot of money to watch Nicolas Cage say that.
Yeah, Hart Bachner might have been stealing some Nicolas Cage juju on that one, but I don't think there's a second place.
No,
in this.
That one's so obvious.
That's not entirely true, because there's in all of the fun little side parts that are in this movie, he would have been great at a bunch of them.
Yeah, the tiny the side terrorists.
Yeah, there's other spots for him that he really could have shown, but no, Ellis is the one.
Yeah.
We wouldn't even have to import him from a different time period.
No, that's what I'm saying.
you could just-
88 Nick Cage.
He would have been great right
in
there.
there.
88 Nick Cage literally did a role of a performance that you could just copy and paste it in there, and it would have been.
I wouldn't be surprised if he didn't get a phone call about this movie.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we agreed pretty easily
I
on both
know.
of those.
Breeze past those.
Where this movie ranks, you guys got the envelope there, yeah?
Yeah.
I'll go first. It's my number 3.
Oh my God.
Number 3, huh?
Number 3.
You know what?
All the way up there.
That showed, I feel like, throughout the episode. I get that.
It doesn't.
You like this movie. You enjoy it.
Did I gush about it
You
enough?
did.
Yeah. That's great. I'm also told that it's Dan's number 9.
Ooh.
So I'm once
Oh my
again in
God.
the uncomfortable position of being more or less in the same neighborhood as Dan, which is, I'm just going to have to get over that one of these days. But
It's also my number 19.
Holy.
Right? It's a movie about a
up there.
New York scumbag that is right below Uncut Gems.
This is a New York scumbag movie, isn't it?
Another New York, different New York scumbag.
Yeah. If it wasn't obvious, it's not on my list, and I wanted to be more of a jerk about it. I thought I was going to be more of a jerk about it. It's really hard to be.
Won you over a little bit.
It's so hard to be a jerk.
It is a bro down of a movie. You're not wrong about that.
But it is so funny.
As evidenced by the fact that it's 3, 9, and 19.
Yeah. Like, well, that's the thing. That's what's so...
Of the 3 white guys that are also voting.
It's so poetic. Like, I kind of love it. Like, my one grudge against this movie is dude bros telling me how good it is. But, I can't be a jerk about it. It's objectively good. It's objectively great.
It's great.
You get this one, dude, so I'll give it to you.
Well, thank you.
Gotta be top 10 now, but are we gonna know where it is if it is in the top 10?
We're not gonna know though, right?
We don't know. It has to be in the top 10 number, right?
It has to be. I would be shocked.
You're getting into that envelope like an animal, like a wild animal.
I love. Oh, we don't have any strikes because we used the last one.
Yeah,
and by we I mean I used it, and there's been a lot of wrongful striking in this season. Not just.
I just want to say,
no drama here, though.
Not just me.
I think I was more justified in mine, but.
Well, when did you strike again?
Actually, no, it was OS.
Take it easy.
It was
OSS.
OSS.
Well, we were both fighting for that one, and here's the thing: if you gave it to me.
Oh, that butterfly effect sucks. I should have given it to you.
If you let me do it.
Oh.
The Dark Knight might still be on this list.
Damn.
Dark Knight might still be on there.
And I mean by might.
The choices we make.
I mean, it would have been because you wouldn't have.
I wasn't gonna strike it.
And you're not gonna strike this.
I wouldn't have. Yeah, I wouldn't have striked it. Yeah.
So, you
Man.
know, there you go.
Live and learn.
And I spent mine because I was uncomfortable.
Yeah. Boo-hoo.
Yeah, and I let you have Uncut Gems too. Man, this whole... Okay. It's the top 10?
Alex is right. It is somewhere in the top 10.
Okay.
Just vaguely top 10.
Vaguely top 10.
I'll take that.
Yeah.
But guys, that is going to do it for both this episode and season 3, Alone Against the World. But there's one other thing that's going to do it for. And I hate to end this on such a down note, so I won't. I'm going to pass it to you,
I
Alex.
get to bring down the mood. No, as many of you already know, if you follow me on social media or read the comments from those of you who follow me on social media, I am leaving IGN. Today is actually my literal last day when we're shooting this. And therefore, I will no longer be a regular host on the CineFix Top 100. Don't ask me what that means. I don't know. But I would say keep following it. And I'll just say on a personal note, it's been a pleasure and an honor to get to know you two through movies and to argue with you and disagree with you and agree with you. Our team, Tayo, my partner in Torf. But this is where I'll also do my PBS for you, the viewers. I think the comments that really kind of like touched me the most were the ones that said you were like kind of treating this like a movie book club, and it was something that you look forward to every week. And I have such a personal relationship with the podcast that I love, and to know that I could be a part of anything that people look forward to once a week has been an honor. And it was movies, and I'm not gonna cry on a podcast because I'm an adult. So thank you.
Grown up.
So thank you all.
No,
I was just a person who showed up on this channel, and you guys embraced me, and I really appreciate it. So thank you. I'm gonna watch fewer movies now.
Well, we really appreciated.
Yeah,
I know.
You're
right?
gonna be missed. It was a blast.
You'll have to. Yeah, you will. You will absolutely be missed. And thank you for sharing all of those Alex ass movies.
Wait, there was a comment I wanted to read because it was my favorite comment of all time. It was a recent one.
Oh, good.
The Kill Bill episode. It was from Luo Lingling 88. This season has just felt like Alex against these two weirdos, and I could not agree more. Thank you so much, Luo Lingling 88, for picking up on that.
The Alone Against the World.
It was really
theme
Alex against
trickled into. Yeah, it was really Alex against the world. I don't know. I don't want to give the algorithm that much credit, but it wouldn't surprise me. But you will be missed. Thank you for 47 episodes.
I did not expect us to get this far. I was the naysayer. I was like, we're not making it past the pilot, guys.
Yeah.
And now here we are.
Well, we stuck to it. But thank you for and you said it best. I mean, getting to know you guys with through the movies that you like is a really interesting way to become friends with people.
I know.
So it's been great.
Yeah.
But that will do it for us. Enough of the mushiness. Thank you, everybody, for joining us for season 3. We will be back for a season 4 sometime in the new year, so stay tuned for updates on that. But in the meantime, also thank you to Deputy Chief of Production, producer Tayo Oyekan, technical producers Amir, Rakib, and Marhyan Franzen, no relation, and DP Jamie Parslow, who is also leaving us this week and will be missed as well. So as Dwayne T. Robinson would say, we're going to have to get some more camera guys, I guess. Dan's not worth mentioning because I just going to want to get back to Alex. Thank you again so much for being part of the show for these 3 seasons. And in the meantime, stay safe, be good, and all of us together now. You ready? Yippee-ki-yay, motherfucker.
I was going to say Melon Farmer. I messed it up.
No, that's the one we're not going to bleep.
Yeah.
That's our PG-13.